Hidden Gems, Episode 27, One Sparkling Year of Gems. Welcome to Hidden Gems, a board game podcast where we review unusual, forgotten, and underappreciated board games. We're your hosts. My name is Chris.
I'm Jason.
And I'm Cameron. Thanks for listening to our first anniversary show.
Woohoo! Unbelievable. It's hard to believe it's been a year already. It does not feel like a year at all, to me at least. It's flown by.
Yeah, I feel like we've said on a couple episodes, it's hard to believe that we've made it to whatever milestone, but it is hard to believe that we made it to a year.
It is.
And that we're still going.
Still going.
And that people are still listening.
And going strong, I might add.
More people than ever are listening.
More people than ever. I'm really just humbled and surprised at how well it's gone so far, to be quite honest. I was not expecting us to have... I hesitate to say success because that kind of implies that we're knocking it out of the park, and I don't think we're doing that. But let's just put it this way. We're way beyond where I thought we would be.
Sure.
I
think that it speaks to the fact that we've hit on something here, which is that there are a lot of other folks out there who are playing games who are like us, who are like, yeah, I mean, I like the new games too, but there's a lot of games out there. Is there anything else out there that maybe I'm missing? And I think we found an audience of people who like that pursuit.
Yep.
Like we do.
For sure.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That's kind of what I was thinking. I'm just glad that we've managed to hit a nerve with folks. Mm-hmm. And we love doing this, obviously. That's why we keep doing it. But it's awesome to have found something that we enjoy doing that we can tell other people are coming alongside and also enjoying. So.
Yeah. The rest of our friends are super annoyed with us because like every time I go to play games at Chris's now, I have to learn a new game.
Some weird game I've never heard of.
No hotness over here anymore. We have not played anything that's come out in the last year.
At any time that they want to play a game that they've played before, it's just teaching.
That's right. That's right. I think we definitely have found a niche that people are enjoying. I was showing the guys earlier today, and I told her that I would mention her on the podcast because literally 2 hours before we recorded, I got an Instagram message from Alex, who is Gamer Griffson on Instagram. She's a board game contributor on there. Really awesome member of the community. And she just randomly posted today my favorite podcasts, and we were one of the 4 up there with Board Game Barrage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice.
Which was pretty awesome, very humbling, and Alex, we appreciate it. She's been with us since the first episode, a big supporter, so
very cool.
I told her I would give her a shout out for giving us a little support today since we were recording. So if you too would like a shout out on the Hidden Gems,
yeah, but seriously though,
feel free to flatter us with praise on Instagram. We're shallow like that.
Yeah, it is remarkable to see because I mean we haven't done much promotion of the show. You have an Instagram account, and Chris, I know you do work on the Instagram.
I try as much as I can.
I never touch that thing, but the fact that we've reached any level of success, quote unquote, is entirely due to word of mouth and people being willing to share with friends, and that means a ton. So if you have friends who you think you would enjoy it, or you feel like writing us a review, every little bit helps.
Yeah, so I thought it would be fun for us just to go over some of our milestones, just to talk about how far we've come this year. Just recently, probably about a month ago or so, maybe a little longer than a month ago, we surpassed 15,000 total downloads.
All right.
Which, to be honest, if we had exceeded 10,000 at the time when we started the podcast, I'd have been thrilled.
Sure.
Way farther.
That seemed like a huge stretch when we started.
Yes. I was thinking, okay, 5,000, we'll keep going.
How many people are in our board game crew?
Exactly.
Multiplied by the number of episodes.
How many times has my mom not listened to the episode but downloaded it and liked it? Yeah. So yeah, that's exciting. We have over 1,600 followers on Instagram. So thank you to Instagram friends. 138 Board Game Geek Guild members as of today. And as Jason mentioned just a minute ago, on Apple Podcasts, we have a 4.9 out of 5 rating, which is pretty decent, and 47 total ratings.
Okay.
Which we appreciate, and we honestly would love to see that number go higher. If you all haven't given us a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts, if you could just find just a little time just to maybe hit the stars and give us a star rating, but if you can write something narrative, that's even better. It helps us out a lot.
You can literally write in your review, good podcast, or mediocre podcast,
whatever you want to say, right?
Yeah, those stats are humbling, like you said, Chris. I think it's important to note, though, we don't throw those out there to brag or to say, like, look at us, because, I mean, honestly, we had no assumptions of that type of success. And For all we know, that's nothing in the,
we don't even have anything
in the world of podcasts.
Nope.
Right,
the numbers are just bigger than we thought they would be.
Right, but we put them out there to say thank you in a way.
Absolutely.
Because we recognize that those numbers are a testament to the fact that we have listeners who are coming alongside us and listening. So I think that's important to note, right?
For sure. Well, I thought it would be a little bit fun since we're doing our 1-year anniversary here. You know how I love to ask you guys questions. And this time I gave you a little bit of a heads up so you could formulate your thoughts.
Oh, you gave us 5 minutes.
8 minutes.
8 minutes before they recorded. So I'm going to ask you just a couple questions just to facilitate conversation. So looking back over the last year, what would you say was your favorite episode that we've done?
This is a tough one. I had a few. In typical not committing to a number fashion. I think I have to mention the Halloween episode.
Oh, yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's high on most people's list, but especially just because I enjoyed doing the editing for that skit so much that I had to throw it out there.
That whole night was a hoot.
Another one that I really enjoyed was actually the Spiel episode.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed going through the history of the Spiel, going through the list of all of them and which ones we'd heard of, which ones we'd played, and playing a couple of the lesser-known ones that I had not even known were on the Spiel list. I enjoyed that episode.
So I actually jump in here. That one was mine.
Yeah.
Was going through the Spiel. I thought it was just something fun and different. I remember the day that we did it. We do a run-through of our outline before we record. And Jason was like, we're going to go through all these? And I was like, yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to work fine. He's like, we can't talk about all these. And I was like, yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be great. It's going to work out.
So for any of listeners out there who actually listened to that section and didn't just fast forward through it, like I would have.
Yeah, you get like 26 reviews in 15 minutes. One of our funner moments.
Might not be the last we hear of the Spiel.
No. Yeah. Oh, you're teasing. Should I tell what we're planning to do?
You should.
I think we should. This is a good time to announce it.
All right.
So my mind is always thinking about possible episodes. So I have a Microsoft Word document that's 56 pages long now of games and topics and potential episodes and ideas. And one that I thought of that I tossed to the guys that they really liked was starting at, I believe, 2015, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to be looking at the Spiel des Jahres, but we're going to be looking at the losers. Yes. So all the games that were nominated or on the recommended list for the Spiel that didn't win, that aren't in the public eye. And you would be surprised. It's amazing how much the Spiel really matters and how well a game does, because I'm telling you, once you start getting into the early 2010s and before that, some of these games I have never heard of. They get obscure real fast. So I thought it'd be fun.
There could be some gems in there.
I think there are gems in there. So it'll be fun to go through those games and then rank them in our own personal order and then say, did we agree with the panel this year? What would have been our favorite game of the year? That's something we got planned coming.
Fun.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be fun. What about you, Cameron? What was your favorite episode?
So I tend to tie my favorites of things with the parts that I was involved in, and the Christmas episode was really fun. Working with Travis to create the music for that episode was just really, really fun. It gave he and I a chance to really connect on some of our Christmas music memories, which we tie a lot of things in Christmas time to music, and making that episode was really fun. My other one is probably the 2-player episode that you and I made together.
Yeah, when we reviewed Lord of the Rings Conversation.
Finding Lord of the Rings the Conversation.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I got to have the experience that we want our listeners to have of being exposed to this new game that you've never played before and then falling in love with it. And that was my main Christmas present, actually, to tie it back to Christmas. Casey found a copy of that, went
Not
through all
easily.
sorts of hoops in order to get it. And I have this deluxe edition of Lord of the Rings The Conversation now, which I had initially said, I love this game and I will come over here to play it because I'm never going to own my own copy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say our 2-player episode. And it was just
That
great
was
to spend
fun.
that time with you as well.
Yeah, we had a good one. Good episode.
Cool.
Awesome. All right, so talking about games that we reviewed, what are the games that we reviewed that stick out in your mind or that were most noteworthy, or maybe the ones that you're the most proud of that we've done over the last year? What would you say?
I have to throw String Railways out there.
A complete evisceration.
Is that the notable category?
It's a good thing we didn't have John
memorable.
Borer on the episode when we reviewed that.
It's memorable, for sure.
I'm going to go with Spectaculum.
Yeah.
That game just shines literally almost a year later.
Great flavor text, great discussion.
I think that was one of the earliest all-out gems, unanimous gems
Yes.
that we found.
Episode
That
3.
was deep in the ratings. Spectaculum still sits in the 4,000s on BGG.
Right.
And we were just excited to talk about it because I feel like that game justifies our existence.
Seriously.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I agree.
we exist as a podcast for games like Spectaculum.
Right.
You know, they need to be talked about. I'd say for me, I actually have 3. So one that I'm really proud of, I would say, is when Jason and I reviewed Matcha.
Yeah, I had thought of that one.
And that was not because we were so mean to the game. We were rough on the game, but I feel like that we, as best as we could, try to do it very professionally. I think it can be really easy to dump on a game and trash a game and not really say why and just say it's bad. But we very systematically broke that game down because we wanted to do it appropriately. And a lot of prominent reviewers gave it good marks, and we didn't. And so we tried to do it very well done and professional. I feel like we did that. And then the other 2 were the bigger games that I felt like we covered about as well as you could, and that would be Struggle of Empires and Three Kingdoms Redux. Those are 2 of our longer ones. We try to keep our reviews around 20 minutes, and those 2 drifted into about 30 minutes, but it's because we felt like they had to be.
Yeah.
And
so much ground to cover.
Yeah, a lot to talk about, and I feel like we did about as good as you could do on those, so I was pretty proud of those.
I will throw out there Hungarian Tarok.
I was literally about to say Hungarian.
It's our worst listened to episode.
And we learned that game, though.
And I can understand why, but I'm proud that we learned that game and that I managed to teach it to y'all.
It's the only game that the instructor had to break out a marker board in order to teach the game, so I felt like it was an accomplishment. When I came home, I was extremely tired. My brain was foggy, but man, we learned that game.
What an experience. And I will say, it's funny, for as little listened to as that episode is in comparison to others, we kind of stimulated a small circle in the board game world. I actually got a few messages from people who are really big into Tarok.
Okay.
Or Taroka games. There's actually a guild on BGG, which is a trick-taking card game guild. And they found out we reviewed Tarok, and they got real excited and invited us to be part of their guild.
That's so cool.
There are definitely some people that enjoyed it, but not everybody.
Yeah.
I found the whiteboard in my closet the other day and had PTSD.
And now you'll never get those words off of your whiteboard. They've just been on there too long.
Forever. One more thing really quickly. I'm jumping a little off subject, but I have to mention this since I talked about Three Kingdoms Redux just a moment ago, and you know how much I love Three Kingdoms Redux. I have some news that I think is important to share because we pushed people so hard to go out and buy Three Kingdoms Redux last episode because, you know, they're destroying stock and it's so great and we want people to experience it. But starting player, I think maybe it's Singapore. I'm not exactly sure, but shipping to the U.S. would be expensive for that game right now. And I'm sure if people went out to look, they probably realized that. Maybe it's a little bit out of their range. Good news, Eric Martin of Board Game Geek has approached Christina and Youster about their remaining stock of Three Kingdoms Redux, and they have actually worked out a deal where they're acquiring a large amount of their remaining stock, and they're going to be selling it in the BGG store.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that earlier this past week, and I was like, I need to go buy my copy. I was like, I don't even want that game.
Yeah. Well, you
but
can
I
get it for much cheaper shipping now.
One just so that there's one more on people's shelves.
Yep. Yeah. So I know that doesn't necessarily help everybody, like our European listeners, but if you're in the United States and you're looking to pick it up, if you wait just a little while, you'll be able to get it a lot cheaper through the BGG store, which is great. I'm just excited to hear that they're not going to get destroyed.
Right, yeah.
You know, just good news. So I did want to share that really quickly. Any other moments? Any fun things before we transition into...
No, everything else was boring.
That's it. I have a couple of things I just want to mention real quick. So when we had Tally on, my wife was fun.
That was fun.
It was a funny episode. It was episode 10, I think. The Corn of Immortal episode. Really enjoyed that. The game show with Dads on a Map.
Oh, that was
fun.
Extremely memorable.
Dylan St. Clair is a hilarious dude.
Amazing.
I would love to have him on the show sometime. Yes. He's just a great guy. And then, of course, James and Sanchez, awesome guys. Really enjoyed doing that. That was our first collaboration.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that was fun. And then another thing that I just enjoy are Jason's book reports.
Reading the Wikipedia.
Particularly Ponzi Scheme.
Oh, man.
That was so funny when he went through that. I really enjoyed that a lot.
I haven't done a book report in a while.
I know. We need
an
to
excuse
get you back
to do
on
another
it. Yeah.
I did the last one on John Bohr, and it kind of sucked compared to Jason. So we need to get you back on that.
All right. Well, that was extremely fun to reflect on this past year, and we'll continue to do that in different ways throughout the rest of this episode. But we did have a special announcement. In commemoration of our 1-year anniversary, we've decided to actually roll out a classic take on a logo t-shirt. So we're going to add a new t-shirt to our store. It's got our full logo that you're familiar with from our podcast art. And we're actually going to do something special for our listeners. We're not interested in making any money on this t-shirt. So we're going to offer a coupon that basically makes it at cost to you. That coupon is going to be anniversary. Just go to our website. You can buy that shirt. Use coupon code anniversary.
Easy.
And that's 2 N's. Step 1, Google anniversary. Step 2, put anniversary in the coupon code on our website. You can get that t-shirt for 50% off.
Awesome.
That is our gift to you to say thank you for listening to the show, and you can sport a shirt.
Love it. It's awesome.
Cool. All right. Well, I feel like I say the same thing every time here, but it happens. It happens every time. But what are we drinking tonight, Chris?
So, keeping it in the celebratory anniversary theme, got a special cocktail for y'all tonight, one that I really enjoy a lot. It's called Mayday. And the reason it's called that is this is actually a cocktail that's often served on May the 1st to kind of celebrate entry into summer. It's a really good one. It's got champagne or Prosecco in it, so it's kind of got that anniversary feel to it. It's a half-ounce gin, half an ounce of Aperol, half an ounce of lemon juice, 1 bar spoon of simple syrup, which is basically a dash. Stir with ice and strain, and then top with 2 ounces of champagne or Prosecco, whatever you prefer. And that's Mayday.
Yeah, it's very good. I've decided that it actually is not the reason I'm having an allergic reaction. You haven't poisoned me. It's okay.
Okay, good. You had to be worried because I feel like you've had an allergic reaction in here before. I think I had the ceiling fan running one time, and I hadn't had it running in a while. I think the dust.
I immediately started swelling up. I'm sure Casey's listening, and she's just going, yeah, not surprised. I'm allergic to everything.
Everything. Awesome. So, yeah, that's what we're drinking tonight. And just briefly, we'll mention something a little different we're doing tonight before we transition into the reviews. So, instead of having a longer banter session tonight, we wanted to do something fun. So, I undertook a labor of love for you all and re-listened to all of our podcasts, which is a little bit weird and was arduous.
Did you ever get used to listening to the sound of your own voice?
No,
that was Jason's issue.
It always
I think that's everybody's issue, isn't it?
It always sounds weird. But basically, I handpicked out some noteworthy or funny, memorable moments over the last year from our podcast, and we've clipped them together in a little montage that we're going to play for you all now. So we hope you enjoy it.
Roll the sappy music.
One fun fact I just thought it would be fun to share because I found in my research I thought it was funny. So he collects something. He collects airline spoons. Have you heard of this?
No.
It's weird to me, yeah.
Never heard of it.
Go figure.
Where does he put it? Probably maybe he's got another room full of drawers.
I think he displays them.
From the Eyeball Stories. The player with the most sheep at the end of the game is the winner.
Fantastic. You sound just like him.
Thanks.
How would you describe your first play of this game?
I mean, you look at the artwork of this game, it looks really pleasant. On the box, I think we were laughing about the fact that it says, contains sheep. On the...
Sheeples.
That's right.
Sheeples.
It looks like a children's game.
Yeah.
Folks, this is one of the most evil games in existence. I just want to make that clear. I'm thinking, oh man, I'm taking Mr. Tim to Mrs. Porty's house to have tea, you know, and I'm like going through the English countryside and I'm picking up sheep. And I'm telling you, by the second round of the game, I felt like I was going through a burning hellscape.
Yeah. You're like, if someone else takes one more of my, sheep.
Yeah, it's brutal.
In addition, the general going mythology, I guess, is that when warriors are slain, they go to Valhalla, right? But apparently Freya actually got first choice of the warriors who were killed in battle, so she would obviously choose the best-looking ones or whatnot.
Freya's a weirdo.
I mean, anytime I'm running a mining company, the first thing I think about is how do I blow up my opponent mining company's track?
How do I cave in my opponent so they get trapped inside this mountain? My wife Talia, welcome to the podcast, babe.
Hey.
Welcome.
Welcome, Talia.
This is a big moment. I know she is excited to be here. She wanted to ride on the coattails of the fame of our podcast now that we're, getting recognized in supermarkets and can't even live a normal life now. I can't even go out to eat, just getting swarmed by fans.
All three of our fans.
Yeah.
By the way, folks, I was joking about that. We're not actually being mobbed by adoring fans.
Do you really think you need to explain that?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Quick rapid-fire questions here from my prepared list.
Wow.
What's your favorite board game?
Come back to it.
What? You can't come back to what's my favorite board game. It's the easiest question.
It is for people that play board games.
How many games do you think I own?
876.
Way off.
Is it it's grown?
Noted. And then the last question, most importantly, who is the meanest player in our game group?
I'm gonna have to say you.
That's a good answer, but I'm sorry, the answer we're looking for is Bill. It's a good try, though.
Okay,
the
okay.
answer is always Bill.
The answer.
So for me, one of the things that I really enjoy about this podcast is it does help me establish in my mind how I really do feel about a game through the writing downs of pros and cons. All right, I think it's just a good way to do things. You know, when people talk about life decisions, they're like, you should write down pros and cons. I'm like, that sounds like a waste of time. But
But for board games, it's so much more.
For sure.
games,
For
it really helps.
Pick yourself.
I was like, wow, this really does help.
Honestly, after I found out that he's been playing the game on his phone, I was like, all right, I feel much better about how I did tonight. This is my second time playing this game, and Jason's got like 400 plays in.
Jason's been practicing in the bathroom on the toilet for the last month. Prepping for this moment to crush us all in Gypsy King. This game has never failed. Every time I put it on the table, I play this game with many different people now, including my kids.
I
And
was gonna mention that.
yeah, they love it. We played it with Knox the other night, and he tied me.
Nice.
He got it. He understood it. I wasn't pulling any punches. I don't do that. My kids.
No, he does not let his
He
kids
will
win.
crush it.
I crush my kids into powder when I play board games with them. I have no mercy on them whatsoever.
I told my father-in-law, who is also my landlord, that yes, we rent from my father-in-law, and he was going to come over and work on my stove, and I said, Gary, you can't come over today. I'm getting ready to record a podcast. And he goes, why don't I come on as a mystery guest? And I'm like, Gary, it's about board games. The only board games you like are Dutch Blitz and Quirkle. And he said, I could just go on and say, I don't know how to plug in these board games. The category
What's her name?
is
Like SET
recent
rules?
releases.
Oh no.
Oh boy, the hotness. The
It's
hotness.
just going to make us
Vote
feel
for
worse
Chris.
when we get it wrong.
Both Hidden Gems and Dads on a Map are known for their love of dusty games with an average BGG score well under 7. But what about the latest hits? What about the games the youngsters are playing? In this category, I am looking for the highest ranked games released since 2019.
So another cool story is he said that he was taking a walk one night, and he said that the idea of Ticket to Ride just came to him suddenly. He had a moment of just total clarity. Has that ever happened to y'all? That has actually happened to me before.
For sure.
Yeah.
Back in the day when I used to write music.
It feels like it's happened to me sometimes, but then I usually think about it a little bit longer. And I'm like, no.
It's Jason overthinking
Yes,
things.
this is awesome. And then I think about it for 5 minutes, and I'm like, nah. So by laying a druid down, thematically, I guess, for whatever theme there is in this game, the druid is picking magical herbs. That's what it says in the rules.
Or he already picked the magical herbs
Yeah, and he's
and enjoyed them.
Exactly.
Absolute chaos, but it's really fun.
Total chaos.
There are expansions to the game that instead of the flux elevator, there
Oh.
are some like
Yeah.
risque named themed.
We played this on your bachelor party, and it was probably one of my most memorable gaming experiences, not because the game was good, okay, but because these tools, quote unquote, that you need to fix your spaceship are very
Sexual, I guess.
suggestively shaped. Let's just put it that way, okay? We're talking about Martin Wallace games, so I had to make a martini Wallace, if you will.
but
I like a martini. My wife loves a martini. Probably too much. Should I edit that out? I probably shouldn't say that.
Yeah. Definitely don't say that. If the moon were made of barbecue spare ribs, would you eat it? Heck, I know I would. I'd ask for seconds. Toss it on down with a tall, cool Budweiser.
If I say onion bottom, everyone with an onion bottom. If I say onion...
we are adults.
Oh, God. If I say onion bottom...
Also, you kept saying onion chit, and if you say it too fast,
I
you
know.
may have to start censoring the podcast.
I'm
as long
trying
as you
to
don't have
enunciate.
onion chits coming out of your onion bottom.
This is a family show. All right, well, that was fun.
Yeah.
Doing things a little different this time. So you may have noticed also that we don't have any Cameron flavor text for this particular review.
You missed it the first time. You got to go back and listen to that episode.
That's exactly right. And there's a reason for that. So we're trying to mix it up a little bit this episode, do things a little different. So we're actually going to revisit one of our prior reviews that we did on the podcast. We're going back and looking at Nefertiti. We reviewed this game in episode 2 of the podcast.
Good one.
It's a good one. We're going way back.
I gave this one a 6.
I was getting ready to say this is Jason's 6. He beat me to the 6 in this
That's
one.
right. We were so shocked. We were like, is that the first 6 for the whole show?
Yeah, Jason, I hate all games, gives this one a 6 before I could dish out my 6 for Strasbourg. But the reason we're going back to this one is we are actually going to be reviewing the Nefertiti Expansion and then giving our thoughts on Nefertiti after a year. And the reason we're doing this was actually recommended by a guild member and local friend of ours, Mike Drummond, had mentioned on the guild that it might be cool to take a look at the expansion, see how we like it. So I thought it would be fun to do it for this 1-year anniversary episode, so we're going to do that.
Yeah. Especially a game that got such high marks from all of us, really.
Yeah, 5.56, I think, if I remember correctly. So, Nefertiti, just to review, was published in 2008 by Matago and Rio Grande Games. The expansion, which is just called the Nefertiti Expansion, was published in 2009. At the time of this recording, Nefertiti's ranking on BGG is 1,510.
Has it changed?
It has. I would love to have said that it's gone lower towards number 1, but it hasn't.
Uh-oh.
Unfortunately, our influence was not enough to overcome the hotness.
In episode 2.
I was going to say, there are probably a lot of newer games that are in the top 1,000 now, right?
I mean, games that come out now within 3 weeks are already in like the top
Right.
500. I mean, it just shuffles everything way down. But I was hoping to say it had gone up, but it hasn't. But it's close to the same level. Designers of the game, Jacques Barriot, Thomas Coe, and Guillaume Montiage. For the rules summary, I am not going to go through the rules in detail. I would encourage you, if you're new to the podcast or maybe you don't remember, going back to episode 2 and listening to Jason give a more comprehensive and thorough summary of the rules. I'm just going to hit...
You guys know Jason likes to be thorough in his rules explanations.
Jason cost me a lot of editing time.
Hey, now, I've gotten better.
I'm like, hey man, Jason, look, just hit the high points, okay? You don't have to give every single rule. He's like, okay, I got it. And he's like giving every permutation possible and every special ability. I'm like, Jason!
Just giving you a lot to work with.
That's right. All right, so very briefly. In essence, Nefertiti is a set collection, auction, worker placement hybrid game where the players are attempting to collect sets of like gifts by placing their workers into one of 4, or 5, if you're playing with the expansion, different markets. Each market has different valued stalls indicating higher or lower bids. The higher the value of a stall that you place on, the more likely you're able to get first pick of the available gift cards present at that market. Market stall closures are all triggered in a slightly different way, having to do with the orientation of the placed workers within that market. So a very simple example would be if you've got a 3x3 grid of market stalls and the workers are placed in a tic-tac-toe formation, the market will close. Once closed, players will then take gift cards and possibly a seal from that market from highest bid moving towards the lowest bid. Instead of taking cards, the players may also optionally take all of the money that is collected on that market from prior player bids. And that is not trivial, as this is a closed economy game and money can get really tight. Once the game ends, the players' collected sets are scored based on their uniqueness. So, for example, if you're the only player with a certain kind of gift at the end of the game, you will score the maximum amount of points possible for that particular gift. If other people also have that type of gift card, the value of that type of gift gets diluted down, depending on the number of players that hold that type of card. So that's the base game.
I don't know, Chris. I'd say that was pretty thorough.
I don't know, man. That was about 4 minutes shorter than your explanation. All right. The Nefertiti Expansion is a modular expansion that adds up to 4 different things to the base game. The first is the addition of 7 new character cards. Like in the base game, character cards are acquired by spending seals and can be used to utilize a variety of game-breaking abilities that allow the players to score more points for their sets or interfere with other players' scoring of sets when purchased. The second module adds a 5th market stall to the game, Memphis. When playing with Memphis, 10 foreign gift cards replace 10 of their counterpart gift cards from the base game. So, for example, 2 Egyptian chairs from the base game will be replaced by 2 foreign chairs. These foreign chairs score for sets just like their base game counterparts do, but they also add +1 or +2 points to every card in that set depending on which foreign gift card or cards the player was able to acquire. During the game, whenever a foreign gift card is drawn during the replenish market phase, it is added to the Memphis market instead of the market currently being drawn for. As soon as at least 4 foreign gifts are present at the Memphis market, that market will close, with players selecting gifts from highest bid down towards the lower bids, just like at other markets. The final 2 modules are the addition of a 5th player and some additional pieces for a 2-player variant, but we will not be speaking to those today because we just never got an opportunity to try those out. So we're just going to be talking about Memphis and the additional player character cards. And that's generally how you play Nefertiti and the Nefertiti Expansion. So as I mentioned in the very brief rules summary, Jason, this is a modular expansion. So you have pieces. You can pick and choose what you use. You don't have to use everything. Very simply, my question would be, which parts of this expansion did you enjoy, if any?
Yeah, I will say up front, I do appreciate expansions that are modular like this. I feel like it gives you a lot more flexibility to be able to pick and choose what you want to add in rather than it being just a whole bunch of extra junk added in. I think we've talked about this in the past. I have cooled a bit on the idea of expansions in general.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people who are just getting into the board game hobby, you get a game and you're like, oh, I have to immediately go out and get the expansion. And I think I've learned over time that most games are not better with the expansion, right?
Yeah, I agree.
I will say for this expansion, not to jump to conclusions yet, but I did enjoy the additional cards.
The characters.
The character cards.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they can be brought in with minimal adjustment to the base game.
No adjustment, really.
Yeah, it just gives you a little bit more flexibility in what those cards are going to be. I was less impressed by the Memphis market. I think it adds more randomness to a game that has a little bit of randomness in it, but is minimal. And so, yeah, we can dive more into that.
So Memphis, it adds 3 things, right? So there's a 5th market component.
Right.
I think that is interesting in and of itself. Just there being something else to do on your turn, right? More options.
Sure.
It has its own unique closing condition, which I'll speak to in a second. And then it adds this whole concept of there being special cards that if you acquire them, it modifies the value of the sets that you're holding.
Yes, makes it more valuable. Yeah.
So I really liked that 3rd aspect.
Sure.
Because to me, it felt like, okay, if I can get 1 of those, that's a big boon for the set that I'm trying to acquire. If I can get 2, that's even better. So I think that aspect of the expansion that it brings in of like maybe it could further boost the value of your cards that you're going to score, that's pretty attractive. I think where I struggled with it a little bit is the market closing condition.
Yeah.
Which is, it's so uncontrolled, right? The rest of the markets are controlled by what people do with their workers on their turn. And
Well, with the
except for
exception
one.
of the dice rolling one.
well,
Yeah.
that's true, but I feel like those are very well dialed in, I'll say. Whereas this is closed by the cards getting placed there when you're refilling.
Yeah, which is totally random.
Right.
It's random based on the deck, and
totally
it's
random.
and it's dependent on the closing of other markets, right? Because the deck is only going to get drawn from based on the closing of other markets.
Right.
Right. So I felt like if there were a different market closing condition, I would probably like the Memphis expansion module more.
Right. Yeah. Since we're talking about Memphis, I will just dwell here for a little bit because I think we should just go ahead and round out our discussion on it. So I agree with you. I do like that it makes the sets more valuable. It gives you another thing to think about. You can't really ignore Memphis.
Yes.
Because that scoring potential that it adds is very powerful.
Significant, yeah.
But I absolutely agree with Jason. In the base game, that one market that's dependent on a die roll, I don't love that, but it's such a minor part that I can tolerate it.
Sure.
I don't love introducing more randomness and uncertainty into a game that's pretty strategic, right?
Yes.
And I feel like Memphis, it's just very random. It's totally random.
Yeah.
You could sit there and the foreign cards couldn't come out for a while, or they
Right.
could come out immediately.
Right.
I just didn't like that part about it. Not to mention, I felt like adding that 5th market, at least in a 4-player game, tended to dilute out the other markets. So if you got another place to
You have
place,
more options, yeah.
the workers are more spread out, and so you don't have that really clever placement in the main 4 markets because the workers are more spaced out.
Yeah.
And I feel like that took away from the game a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess you could say Memphis maybe adds more strategy in that you have to be gauging if other people are going for it or not, right? If everyone is focused on going for Memphis and is weighting those bonus cards equally, then everyone is going to have at least one worker there,
Yeah.
right? And then everyone is dependent on the timing equally. then it becomes the same as every other market where you're jockeying for the best position in that market to get what you want, right? But I feel like where it goes a little astray is if only one person is weighting that as important, then they're either going to get massively lucky
right,
or they're going to get stuck and they're going to fall behind everyone else.
It's extremely high risk, high reward.
Yeah.
Right?
I know it sounds like we're being rough on Memphis, and I think we are, justifiably so, but I think for certain people it could add good things. I will say one more thing about Memphis, though, that I think is worth mentioning, because I think, Cameron, it really hit you when we played it. Because the cards that trigger Memphis are not added in addition to the cards that you start the base game with, they replace.
Right.
The number of gift cards you start the game with is the same number as when you add the fifth market. So that's the same number of cards spread out amongst more markets, which tends to speed the game along.
Right.
And I remember when we played it, it ended one time and Cameron was like, whoa, it's over? The end can sneak up on you because Memphis tends to drain the deck faster.
Yeah.
And the game may end quicker than you want it to.
Yes.
Because Memphis is just in the game, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the other module that we played with, the extra cards. What do you guys think about those?
Yeah, I'll echo your thoughts on this, Jason. There's really not a lot to say about this module, and I think that's a strength of it. I totally agree with Jason. I don't like expansions that add like a sideboard that has its own extra rule set, and it changes a lot of things. The character cards don't change any rules in the base game. There are no additional rules. It's just more cards. Yep. It's just characters that do different things. It's easy to incorporate. You could incorporate it in the base game and people wouldn't even know they were playing an expansion. That is how expansions should be done.
Yes.
In my opinion. It's perfectly done. And I felt like they were all pretty balanced and they just give you more things to think about.
Yeah.
Alternate paths to victory, different ways to score points. The 7 character cards, in my opinion, are excellent. I really liked them.
I agree with you in terms of how expansions should be modeled. It's like, here's another thing to incorporate more and better replay value into it. The reason Dominion is so amazing, all of those other expansions, they're expansions of the original game, but the game stayed the same. They just added all these other cards. So when you inject different combinations of those different cards, you can imagine replay being different from game to game, and that's good for a game.
I will point out the rules for the expansion also give a couple recommended combinations of the cards that you can use, which is kind of cool too, to give it different flavors, right? If you want to be more confrontational. I thought that was a nice touch.
Nice. Shall we wrap it up?
Sure.
So for this particular review, I thought what we would do is we will give a grade based on our feeling for the expansion, and then a 1-year retrospective on Nefertiti, how we would grade it now, playing it again after a year. Would it be the same? Has it gone up? Has it gone down? See what we think about it.
Okay. I'd be happy to go first.
All right, Cameron, go for it.
Okay. So commenting directly on the expansion, how I felt it impacted play of Nefertiti, I've got to go with a 3. I do think that the cards were a good angle to take for an expansion. I think Memphis itself puts it in that 3 territory for me. I felt like when I was playing with the expansion, I was like, I would be totally fine if this was just a normal play of the base game. And that leads to the second part of my review, which is that Nefertiti is a great game.
It is.
And to be honest, because we've actually reviewed a lot of games, I'm not a novice reviewer anymore at this point. We're on the road to 100 reviews, believe it or not. I've reviewed enough games now that I think that I would be putting Nefertiti in a 5. I gave it a 4 in our previous review, and I think that it should be in a 5 for my standards of play. I love the game. If you wanted to play it tonight, I would play it.
Yeah.
It's solid, and in my opinion, a game that doesn't need expansions to be great is an awesome game.
Agreed. Nice. All right, so for me, I have really mixed feelings on this expansion. I really like these character cards a lot. I'm glad that I have them. They're that good. Again, they're minor changes, but they just add to the replayability of the game. I'm super pleased that I have them. The Memphis expansion, I will probably never play with again. Okay, so one thing I really didn't care for, one thing I really liked. Does that justify purchasing it? Well, I think it depends on the price point. And this is really the biggest issue with this expansion because the game is older.
Okay.
You really can't get this expansion for cheaper than $25.
Yep.
So are you going to pay $25 for 7 cards? I can't recommend that. And it feels so rough because I'm glad I have it.
Yeah.
I'm keeping it just for the character cards. But could I tell my listeners go out and buy this expansion for 7 cards at $25? No, I can't. I think based on that, I have to give it a 3 because, as you said, Cameron, the base game plays just fine on its own. You don't need the expansion. It's a luxury. And so in that case, I think I would just settle on a 3 for it as well. For Nefertiti as a whole, I gave it a 5 back in episode 2, and it is still a 5 for me. It hasn't changed. I still think it's excellent. The closed economy, I love. The tension of the placement of your workers in the spaces. The game is excellent. The only worry I have about this game, and Cameron, you mentioned it, is I do worry that maybe the scribe character card is too strong. Because in the games
3.
we play, it tends to be a card that whoever wins the game gets.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm still not convinced that that's overpowered or anything, but I don't know. It's happened a few times. So there is that. But despite all that, I still think it's excellent. Nefertiti still gets a 5 for me.
Cool.
All right, Jason. You gave it a 6 last time.
I did.
See if it holds up.
Yeah, so the expansion, I think my thoughts are similar to you guys on the expansion. I was going to mention the price point as well. I think we've talked about Memphis enough. I don't think I would voluntarily play with Memphis again. The extra character cards are nice, but I think it's adding more to a game that didn't need more in the first place, right? I don't think having more is a bad thing. If you care to spend the amount that this expansion costs for that additional variability, then I say go for it.
Sure.
But it is a high price point to pay for that small of a difference. And I don't think it needs that difference because I think the base game is strong enough as it is. So that said, I settled on a 3 for the expansion as well. As for the base game itself, I will say early on in the podcast, we were new to this. I was probably pretty excited to give something a 6, right? But I'm gonna stick with my 6.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Because when I think about a game like this, I think like, well, if this isn't a 6, then what is in my book, right? Sure, maybe there are better games out there, but I have a hard time thinking back through the history of the games that we've reviewed on this show and finding other games that I could point to and be like, that deserves to be a 6 more than Nefertiti does.
Spectacular. Don't let me derail you. I'm just being a jerk.
I'm trying to remember what I gave Spectacular
Give it
now.
a 5.
Okay. Yeah, I think, I don't know. I'm sticking with my number because I think this game is fantastic. And I think that for what it is trying to do, it does it extremely well. And I think that's a testament to that is the number of people in the guild who have gone out and bought this game for themselves and tried it out and really enjoyed it. And that's a cool thing to see as well. I still highly recommend it.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I will say another quick shout out on Instagram. So there's a contributor, Casey, Brain in a Jar. I said I would give her a shout out too. So on their Twitch channel, they were talking about Metropolis, which we're not talking about tonight, and gave us a lot of love on there for giving them that rec. And then they also mentioned Nefertiti, although she couldn't remember it was called Nefertiti, but she was talking about Nefertiti. She said how much she liked that one too. So really appreciate hearing people enjoying our recommendations.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Man, Metropolis.
Yeah. So good.
I feel like that one should have been one I mentioned before in terms of favorite games we reviewed. Man, that's a good one. I don't even remember what I gave it, but I hope it was a high number.
I'm sure it was at least 5. Roxley, get on that reprint. Good grief.
Yes.
Well, you know, this expansion, since you don't even own the base game, Chris,
Not yet.
If you're looking to offload it, I would be happy to take those character
I'm
cards.
going to hang on to my little expansion box here until I buy my own copy. But if you too would like to own the Nefertiti expansion, there are copies available on Noble Knight. You can pick it up there. If you do, we would appreciate it if you use our discount code for 2022. It's HIDDEN22. Put that in the coupon code field, get 10% off your order. There are also 5 copies available on BGG as well.
All right. Well, those are our thoughts on Nefertiti and its expansion.
Nice.
Money makes the world go round. But what makes the money go round? You do! In this quick and clever game of an international currency collection. Strategy matters most as players try to...
Whoever turns out to be the most prudent patron by amassing the greatest wealth wins the game. Spectacular!
Yes!
Be a Western rail and real estate baron. Unleash the engines of progress in 19th century America, where the rail ruled the West, creating fortunes and fuel.
Rough. More than one sailor wandered in for nothing more than a quick drink, only to wake up head pounding in the cabin of a tramp steamer. And so this recruitment method, favored by unscrupulous captains, came to be known as being shanghaied. the notorious Captain.
An ancient dwarven city out of the mountain lies in ruins, and the dwarves are determined to recover the lost treasure. 8 dwarven mining companies are ready to finance the project. Undercover agents match wits in a race for the top secret file. A darkened street, mysterious cloaked figures. Who are these agents, and what are their plans? Eccentricity is what makes the world go round. Well, your world, anyways. As a member of the pretentious antique club, you will feel inexplicably compelled to outshine your other snobby friends. What you and your...
Of course, the most valuable gems are found further downriver, close to the waterfall. Yep, there's a waterfall, and careless canoers that don't keep an eye on the currents can fall over.
The year is 1892. The bank at Repentant Springs has been robbed. Many good citizens, including Sheriff Anton Dreyfus and schoolmarm Sue Daggett, were brutally slain as the gang shot its way, whooping and hollering, out of town. Across the leagues of a vast ocean, a world has been discovered, Terra Nova. Your liege has sent you to Terra Nova with an important mission. Claim as much of the new world as possible. The opportunity awaits, but you will not be alone in your pursuits. Nay, rival pioneers, your opponents have the same goal. In order
Famous expedition. Famous explorers.
Expedition.
Famous explorers.
Famous explorers.
Expedition.
Left. You find yourself with no choice but to follow the shadows that linger inside of you, and to fulfill this will before any of the other automatons.
The distant future, the year 2000.
an age of discovery and sail, a period of colonization and the beginnings of industrialization, and also a time of almost constant warfare in Europe and its far-flung colonies. You will assume the leadership of one... It was fabulous! Fearlessly you found the 3 fetishes in the Finnish fjord. With light-footed and foxy feints, you ferry the fetishes to Prince Fieso in France to free the fascinating fairy Fabula. But as long as the Colosseum exists, Rome will exist. When the Colosseum will be destroyed, Rome will be destroyed. And when Rome be destroyed, the world will be destroyed. Beta Venerabilis. The players build together the big Colosseum. Ponzi scheme is the term used to describe the technique Charles Ponzi used in 1919 to perpetuate one of the most notorious financial frauds in history. In theory, people were investing money and receiving dividends. In reality, there was no investment at all. All the dividends were paid.
In this game, you are a battleship pilot hurtling through space. Your challenge is to race a course spanning the solar system. Navigate your power ship as you careen towards victory at the finish point.
Hidden inside the sinner's pit of the antique library are cursed tomes, heretical books, treatises on witchcraft and black magic, and precious volumes of Kabbalah.
What you probably weren't expecting when I got to verse 3. 5 golden rings. Forward to the rules. 3 reviews. Too many thoughts on the 12 days of Christmas card game. From the green hills of the Scottish Highlands comes a card game stuffed full of fun. The goal is to simply play all of your cards first. But beware, hidden in the misty crags and subtle strategies that require mastery of tricky combinations, wild cards, and bombs! Sharing a common lineage with the...
So many good memories. So many failed attempts at trying to be funny.
Yeah, us not doing voices well and Cameron doing voices well.
I'm speaking for myself, I guess, in that.
Not you.
I'm over here patting myself on the back.
Cameron's just looking for praise right now.
No, it really is a lot of fun to do those every episode. Literally, that's why I joined this show. Chris is like, I'm thinking of doing a podcast. I'm like, doing the flavor text.
Just when I think, too, you're going to run out of voices, you somehow find more in your bag of D&D voices. It's always impressive. All right, so for this review, we're revisiting one of our older reviews. We're going to be revisiting the Dolmengötter, specifically looking at the block cycling variant. So when we reviewed this game on the BGG Guild, some people started chirping in one of our posts, specifically Wesley Vandenberg, who's been with us for a long time. He has suggested that we try playing this game again with the block cycling variant. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, yeah, I'd really like to do that. Hopefully we'll get around to it. And I thought this 1-year anniversary episode would be a good opportunity. So Wesley, we are taking a look at that variant for you at your request.
Yeah.
So the Dolmengötter, just to review, was published in 2005 by Eggert Spiel. At the time of this recording, its BG ranking is 4,598. Designer of the game, Thomas Odenhoven. Just like with Nefertiti, I will not be giving a comprehensive rules overview. If you would like to hear that and our thoughts on the Dolmengötter when we first reviewed it, you can go to episode 15. That's when we were talking about our abstract game episode.
Yeah.
For my equally thorough rules explanation.
Thorough and confusing explanation of the Dolmengötter. I will also preface by saying, much like I did in Jason's review before he went over the rules of this really weird game, Google this board and look at it.
You gotta see it.
You have to see it, or it's just not going to make sense.
You gotta behold the glory of the little blades of grass that they decorated the edge of the board with.
Yeah, the neon green on black just really looks great on Google Images. All right. So in the Dolmengötter, the players are placing octagonal stones on a board, attempting to obtain stone majorities around rings of different sizes. So you'll have square, hexagonal, and octagonal rings, having obviously 4, 6, or 8 vertices where the stones are placed. Each player has 3 different druids or meeples on the board, and these meeples will be moving from vertice to vertice?
Vertex to vertex.
Vertex to vertex. I did it wrong again. Vertex to vertex along the long edges of these different sized rings. When a player moves a druid on their turn, that player will leave behind a stone in the space that druid left from. If a player ever achieves a majority of stones along one of the vertices of one of the rings on the board, as long as at least one other player is placed somewhere along that ring, they get to place one of their dolmen face down inside of that ring of stones. Dolmen are square blocks with a value of anywhere from 1 to 4 printed on one side of the block. If another player later equals the number of stones present at the vertex of a ring, they get to place one of their dolmen underneath all of the previously placed dolmen. And if a player overtakes all of the other players having the most stones at the vertices of a ring, they get to place a dolmen on top of all the other dolmen present in that stack inside that particular ring. When a ring scores, the players will multiply the value printed on their dolmen by a modifier based on where their block sits in the stack of dolmen, with dolmens on or near the top receiving higher multipliers than dolmens on or near the bottom. It should also be noted that rings with more vertices also have higher base multipliers. Normally, when a ring gets entirely enclosed by stones, the ring will score, and then all dolmen placed in that ring are removed from the game. However, in the block cycling variant, after a ring scores, the dolmen used in that ring get returned to their players to be used again in the game. So that's the main difference with this variant. In addition, in the Dolmengötter, the game normally ends once one player has placed out all of their dolmen. However, in the block cycling variant, the game ends once one player has placed their last stone, with all other players getting one more turn at that time. Most points wins the game. That's generally how you play the Dolmengötter with the block cycling variant. So let's just jump right into it here. Obviously, we're talking about the block cycling variant. I'll just kick it over to you guys and ask you, did it improve the experience? Was it better? Was it worse? Did you feel neutral on it? How did you feel about this variant?
I'll go first. So I will say that the main thing that I think the variant improves for this game is that I think the end condition is better.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I knew you were going to mention this because of one of your cons last time. But go ahead. I know what you're going to say, I think.
Yeah, I just feel like having one player at least play out all of their stones, the pace of the game is just so much better. On the flip side, the idea of getting your dolmen back, I won't get into it right now, but it didn't make that big of a difference for me. Not because it didn't happen to me, but because of what other players are able to do to prevent that.
Which is fun.
It definitely changes the game, and I think that's good for a variant rule set or an expansion like we're talking about in this episode. I think that it's good that it changes the game. But for me, the main benefit of this variant is that the end condition, I think, feels more correct.
Yeah, I agree. I remember when we first reviewed this game and played it, one of the things that you were unhappy about, Cameron, when the game ended, you were like, look at all this empty board.
Yeah.
The game ends and there's just so much of the board that isn't manipulated.
It's possible to play the game in such a way that a player can sort of rush the end by figuring out what moves that they can take so that they drop a dolmen. You're incentivized. By virtue of being the person who got all their dolmen out, you score the most points.
Which is usually the person that wins.
Kind of a cheap way to win the game.
Right.
Yeah, you don't even have to focus.
Anytime you can rush the end of a game, it's a cheap way to win.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't even have to focus necessarily placing your blocks in the most ideal way.
And
you just get them onto the board.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And I'll segue to Jason by making this comment. I think Jason probably, the last time we played this, placed the fewest dolmen of anybody.
Yeah.
And he won the game because he placed his dolmen the most efficiently, which is very different from the base game, which is usually, like Jason said, just get them out. Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about this variant.
I knew you did.
Because, for context, I gave this game a 3 and actually sold it to Chris.
Yeah, and I know you're hating it now. I can tell. I could tell why we were playing. I was looking over at Jason, kind of side-eyeing him, and I was like, man, Jason is so mad that he sold me this game right now.
Well, we'll come back to that part. But yeah, to key off of what you brought up, Cameron, the end game condition, I love this change. I think it makes a world of difference in the game because it changes the strategy completely.
Yeah.
Yes, for the better.
In the base game, the strategy is get your blocks on the board as quickly as possible.
Yes.
Maybe try to get your 4 and your 3 onto a good spot or onto one of the big rings.
Which everybody does.
Which you can do pretty easily. This changes everything, right? Because now there's so much more to think about. And that takes me to the block cycling piece, which I know you were less excited about. I think this changes the game drastically as well. One of the biggest gripes that I had in the original, there is a shared incentive in this game because it forces it. It forces that you cannot place a dolmen unless there is at least one other player on a ring with you. But that shared incentive in the original game is purely opportunistic. It is, all right, I just need somebody else to be on this ring and then I can jump on it and I can score all the points. And when we played this game originally, I kind of found that trick early on of, well, I'm just going to go to all the places where people inevitably leave stones behind that starts a ring, but then they can't get back to it because they were going in a different direction to try to move on to a different ring, right? And that happens all the time in this game. It's a little bit tricky to explain. But if you key into that, then it's just, well, I'm going to go on to all the rings where somebody has already done the work to start it, where I know I can score points, and I will be uncontested there, and I can just keep dropping blocks there because that person has moved on and they can no longer come back and fight me for it.
Yep.
And so, yes, there's a shared incentive, but it's that opportunistic, I'm just going to go wherever somebody else has already done the work, and I'm not actually interacting in any way.
It's a shared incentive that only one of you is going to take advantage of.
Exactly. And it's pretty easy to do that in the original game.
For our listeners, again, go look up this game board. The circles, they all back up to one another. So if you place a stone on one circle, you've just placed a stone on the circle behind it as well.
Or another.
Sometimes
maybe
even 3.
A vertex meets 3 different rings,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Good job. You get to use of the word vertex.
I'm trying. I had to think about it before I said it.
And another point to that opportunism piece is that another mechanic in this game is that you can equal someone else's stones on a ring to also be able to place a dolmen there.
Right.
But generally in the base game, it's not your best play.
Right.
You can do that if you're stuck somewhere or you can't get to a better spot, but it's generally not your best play because you're just setting that person up to come back in and place another one and take the majority again.
Right.
And place another block on top. So you're always driven to these places where someone has started it and you can get in and be the only person there. And that's, I'm sure that's not the only strategy in the base game, but it worked pretty well for me most of the times that we played. And it was kind of like, well, if that's what I'm going to do every game, then this is boring.
Right.
Right. In this one, it changes everything because you are now incentivized to be right in the middle of what everyone else is doing. For 2 reasons. First, you know that if you can place where someone else is building and know that you can potentially drop a high number there and be pretty safe that you're going to get it back. Because you know, maybe. And that's
what's cool about
I'm coming
this
to
game.
that, right? You can place there and know that, well, I know Chris is also working on this circle, so there's a pretty good chance that we're going to complete it together and I'm going to get my block back. So maybe I throw my 4 in there. Maybe I throw my 3 in there.
Yeah.
And even if Chris got there first, I'm still getting a decent amount of point return out of it and keeping up.
Yep.
But yeah, to your point, Chris, what makes it tense is that you can also block.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there was a situation where we had one of the big rings and I had the last guy on one of those rings and we had both placed some blocks in there. But it was like, well, I can just leave him there.
Yes.
Never move him. And now if Chris put his 4 in there, because I knew I didn't have my 4 in that ring. If Chris has his 4 in there, I'm never moving that guy.
Yes.
And you can even maneuver yourself into those positions. And so it just adds so much more tension of, oh, what number do I put in this block? Because what's the chances that I'm actually going to get it back?
Right.
And I loved that.
Yeah.
You played that strategy quite well.
I loved sitting on rings where I at least had a suspicion that somebody had a high-valued block there and was like, not moving. And now they've just lost so much power because I think in the last game we played, one of the reasons Jason won is he was able to reuse his 4 several times.
Right.
But if we could have picked up on the fact that maybe he had that 4 and just not scored a ring, we take that away from him, right? So you have to really be paying attention to what your opponents are doing. But on the flip side of that, when you play your 4, like Jason was saying, you're evaluating incentives so much more with this variant because what's really influencing your decision on whether to place your 4 or not is you're looking at the people in that ring and you're trying to figure out how incentivized they are to move.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
And so it's just incentives on top of incentives, right? It's just way better.
It really, I think what we're saying is that this variant rule set just transforms this game, right?
I'll throw out one more thing that it changes real quickly. I think it changes the bluffing element of placing numbers as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
In the base game, it's like, well, I managed to get a majority in a large ring. Guess what number's going in there?
Yeah.
Right?
Nobody's surprised.
Everybody knows that I'm putting a 4 there.
Right.
And no one
It's not
should be
exciting.
surprised by that, and no one should be threatened by that because that's what you do when you get a block into a big ring. Now it's, well, I could put my 4 in that big ring and hope that I get it back. But if I do that, then people might think that I'm doing that and lock me in. So maybe I throw a 1 in there, and then Chris leaves his dude sitting on that ring the entire
Doesn't
game
do
to prevent
anything
me
with
from
it
getting
for
my
no
block back,
reason.
and it's a 1.
Yeah.
Maybe I throw my 4 into one of the small rings, knowing that no one's caring about whether that one closes or not, and I get it right back, right? And that's...
Yeah.
It makes the secret element of placing those numbers actually mean something.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have any cons to say about this variant? Nah, me
Not
either.
really.
All right, let's review it. All right, I'll start. I am really glad that we played this block cycling variant with the Dolmengötter. When I originally reviewed the game, I gave it a 4, which is good. I kept it, but I was very much on the fence between a 3 and a 4. I was thinking, I'll keep it. I'll play it a couple more times. It might go in the sell pile. It is solidly landed into the I'm not getting rid of this game anytime soon pile. The variant helps it that much. You should always play this way. Don't play with the base game rules. Don't play that way. It's inferior in every way. Having said all that, I'm still giving the game a 4. That doesn't mean that I disliked it. Obviously, it's good. It's solidly 4 now. I think this game, I mentioned the first time, still just kind of lacks that special sauce that we talk about.
Is it the graphics, Chris?
It might be. I don't know. I mean, I don't really
Is it
care.
the stark black game board that...
I don't know. There's just something about it that doesn't make me over the moon for it.
Yeah.
But if somebody was like, hey, I want to play the Dolmengötter, I'd be like, yeah, let's play it. I like it. It's fun. I'm really glad that I have it. I'm excited to hear what Jason has to say about it because I'm really glad he sold it to me.
Are you glad that Chris has it?
You can play it anytime you want. You can come over here.
Yeah, so I'll go.
Yeah,
I
go
gave
ahead.
this game a 3 when we reviewed it originally. This game has moved up for me. It's solidly in the 4 realm at this point. And I was debating 5. I think it's solidly 4 at this stage because I had to compare it. It's obviously an abstract game, so I had to compare it to other abstract games that we've reviewed on the show. Terra Nova being the one that stands out in my mind. This is not Terra Nova.
It's not that good, yeah.
But it's a lot shorter than Terra Nova.
It is.
It plays way faster, and it doesn't make me
want to
want
punch people?
like go home and sleep for 3 days afterwards. So it's definitely got some merits for potentially being higher later on. But yeah, it's solidly in the 4 camp for me now.
Nice.
Very glad we tried the variant.
Very cool. Yeah, I think overall my impression of the variant rules is that it just drastically improves the game in general. I'm really glad that we gave it another try. It really just made the game incredibly more interesting. I felt extremely engaged the entire time playing it. I was trying to figure out how can I get my dolmen back, and then I realized that Jason was just going to camp on my rings and not let me score any points before the end of the game. But yeah, this is the fairy godmother of rules changes, right? It just changes the game for the better. So overall, I think I am also going to stay at a 4. I had a 4 before. It's hard because we've reviewed so many games at this point. I feel like I know what a 5 feels like.
Yeah.
And I don't think that this necessarily puts it into that territory, but it's a more solid 4. Like a more different 4.
A what?
You guys, have you ever seen Strong Bad from Homestar Runner?
I know it, but I have not
He
watched
wears
it
a luchador mask and wears boxing gloves, but he answers people's emails. It kind of talks like this.
I have no idea what you're talking about right now.
People out there know.
I know what you're talking about, for sure. But I have not watched a lot of Homestar.
He draws a picture of a dragon, and he's like, you know how to draw a dragon? You draw an S, and then you draw a more different S.
No
Pretty
clue.
cool. You put a beefy arm coming out the back of his neck.
You know I'm cutting all this, right?
It's a more different 4.
So a 4.
A 4.
I love it. All right. Well, if you're interested in trying out Dolmen or the Dolmengötter, either one, there are no copies on Noble Knight, unfortunately. It's getting a bit rare-ish, but there are 14 copies on BGG. So you can pick it up there if you want to give it a try. And I recommend it. Like I said, I don't want people to think that our 4s are mess.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they can be perceived that way. 3s are meh. 4 is, I like this game a lot, and I want to play it if somebody wants to. But like Cameron said, there's just something in my mind about the distinction between a 4 and a 5, some way that it hits me, and it just doesn't quite hit me that way. But it's good. Liked it a lot. Glad we played it.
I will say there are 2 copies of Dolmen on BGG as well.
Oh, nice.
So.
If you want marginally better artwork, pick up Dolmen.
All right, those are our thoughts on the block cycling variant, Die Dolmengötter.
Dolmengötter.
Dolmengötter. Empires rise and fall. In the buffer areas and crossroads between civilizations, however, a clever ruler can sometimes adopt new ideas, establish trade, and found a city-state, such as the great Phoenician cities of Tyre and Sidon, that will outlast many neighboring empires. Phoenicia is a strategy game of bidding and development for 2 to 5 players, ages 12 and up. Each player rules a settlement located on the shores of the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East, more than 3,000 years ago. During play, you spend wealth and expand your settlement, adding tiles and tokens to it. The first player to successfully found a city-state wins.
Love it.
Woo!
Nice.
I always like it when you throw some rules in your flavor text. Maybe it'll shorten Jason's rules explanation a little bit.
Hey, I think you'll be proud of me this time.
Put our listeners to sleep.
And that's generally how you play Phoenicia.
Perfect. No rule summary.
No, you gotta listen to me anyway. All right, Phoenicia. This is gonna be interesting.
Oh gosh.
Published in 2007 by JKLM Games and Rio Grande, designed by Tom Lehman, and currently ranked on BGG 2,344. So Phoenicia, like Cameron said, is an auction game of civ building. Players are bidding for development cards, which they're going to use to improve their city-state. Each round, players will have a semi-random collection of cards to choose from to put up for auction one at a time. Each card has a minimum bid amount, and in general these get larger as the game progresses due to the construction of the deck. There is a turn order mechanic that determines who chooses cards to put up for auction that I'm going to skip for now, but it's important to note that the player who chooses a card must bid on it and must be able to bid at least the minimum required bid. So players will be bidding on cards using money. Another thing to note is that while there is only one currency in the game, it can take two different forms, cards and coins. Cards have a value on them of 4, 5, or 6, and they're randomly drawn off the top of a stack. So you never know exactly what you're going to get when you draw a card.
Sounds fun. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Save your reviews for later, Chris.
No, it's good. Go ahead.
And coins, of course, are worth 1. Cards grant improvements in some combination of 6 different areas. So the first is victory points. Almost all of the cards grant the player who wins that card some number of victory points. The next area is income. This moves a player's marker up an income track that determines how much money, cards plus coins, they will receive at the end of the round to put towards the next round. The next area is storage. So players are restricted in how much money they can carry from one round to the next. Some of the cards grant additional storage, thus increasing the player's hand size for the remainder of the game. Another area that cards can give benefits in is discounts. So some cards provide a discount off of your bid should you win a particular future card. For example, winning the city center will give you a -4 discount on your bid should you win the public works. Discounts stack if more than one of the same discount granting card is purchased. These discounts create somewhat of a tree of benefits, like a tech tree. The public works in turn grants a discount on an even more valuable card, for example. However, earlier cards in the tree are never a prerequisite for later cards, they just provide discounts. Another category of benefits that cards can provide are workers. These workers can be trained or untrained, and workers, once they are trained, can be placed out onto occupation cards. Each player starts the game with 2 occupations, hunting and farming, and occupations grant a worker placed on them some amount of increase in both income and victory points. The final thing that development cards can grant are upgrades and additional occupations. So some cards grant either a fully new occupation, such as mining or cloth making, while others grant upgrades to existing occupations. That's pretty much it. Play progresses until the end of a round in which any player reaches 30 points, and most victory points wins. And I would say that was a pretty thorough yet concise explanation of the rules of Phoenicia.
That was all right. Could have done it shorter.
So, like we said, this is an auction game, and an important component to most auction games is the necessity of playing defense, i.e. outbidding or sometimes just bidding up another player. What were you guys' thoughts on the way defense played a role in this game?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying positive things.
Oh, surprising.
Because I agree with Jason. That's definitely a component of auction games. And I do think that there's definitely a component of bidding people up in this game. Like most auction games, you don't want to give somebody something for cheap. And it's pretty easy in this game, actually, to figure out if a card is valuable to somebody.
Sure.
The way that those discounts stack on each other, if you have 2 cards that kind of synergize towards getting bigger discounts toward more valuable cards later in the game. The Dyer, for example, is a big one. If Jason has a Dyer and the second Dyer comes out, Jason wants that card. Right. We all know it.
Yeah.
Right? So you can utilize that and bid them up. And I think that is definitely a strategy in this game, and it's a good one. I think bidding up people also comes with some risks, because if you bid too high and they pass, you get stuck with it, and that can be really bad. Because again, you are probably also trying to work on a synergy or a strategy. And while that card may award you some points or might award you some production, it's not fitting into the pathway that you're trying to move down. I only purchased that card because I'm denying somebody else, but it's pulling me off of my strategy. So there's definitely risk to bidding up.
Yeah.
So I thought that part was good. Okay.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely interesting. I think we've seen both flavors of that happen. Someone successfully bidding up and just raising the price that the person who really wants it will ultimately pay.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, I'm going to take it so you can't have it version. That maybe is more painful to swallow.
Right. And that's, I mean, I hate to get into cons, but I think we just have to go ahead and talk about it. Jason asked the question, okay?
Sure.
And that's one of the biggest struggles I have with this game is the defense, is that distinction between bidding somebody up versus feeling compelled, either by yourself and other people at the table, to take a card so that somebody else can't have it. That really does not help you further your plans. And it happens in this game a lot, in my opinion. You can feel it at the table. A card will flip over, and everybody's looking at each other like, okay.
Like, you're going to take it?
Jason's not getting this card, so who's going to take the card, right? And everybody's looking at each other like, who's going to take the card? And it's tough to continue to be the person to take the card because you're throwing yourself off of your plans, which sets you back, right?
Yeah.
But if I don't take it, and everybody passes around, and then Jason's got 2 dyers, it's going to be really hard to stop Jason at that point, right? So then you're depending upon other people to do what you yourself are not willing to do, right? So it creates a conundrum at the table of who's going to bite the bullet and do this, which, to be honest, I just didn't love.
Yeah.
And I'm probably downgrading it a bit. I was spewing vitriol when we were playing this game.
Oh, man.
I was getting angry.
Much verbal ink was spilled over these points.
Yes.
But I have so much to say about this.
I'll let Jason talk. I've got more to say, but I'm sure he's got a rebuttal for me, so I'll go ahead and let him speak. But yes, an issue for me.
Yeah, I have so much to say about this. Well, first of all, to go back to my original question of the defense. Defense, I think, is this game. I think it is essential in this game. And one thing that I heard you say a couple times that kind of kept coming out as you were talking was it keeps pulling me off my plan. It's pulling me off my plan. It doesn't fit with my plan. And I think that's where we see this game differently.
Yeah.
I don't think you can have a plan in this game in the early game. I think as the game progresses, you can start to hone in on a plan. But that's the thing about this, is that no card that comes out in this game is a bad card. None of them. None of them are bad. And so even your example of saying, well, the dyer comes out, we can't let Jason get the other dyer. That's true. You can't let me get the other dyer because then you're guaranteeing that I have a strong discount on a card. But you having the other dyer is not a bad thing for you. It's actually a great thing for you to have the other dyer. It might not be exactly what you were planning, but you are now equally capable of getting the thing that I was going to get for a massive discount as I am.
But you can't get everything in this game.
You can't get everything in this game, but you can pivot. And so...
Oh boy, here we go with that. I can't wait to talk about that. Go ahead.
All right, well, there's a lot of debate on this game on BGG, which is part of the reason why I wanted to bring it onto the show, right? Because I was just reading so much about it, and there was so much debate over the production quality, which we'll go into later, and just over the structure of the game in general. And as I was doing research on the game, I came across a forum where Tom Lehman was actually responding to somebody who had listed off several complaints or aspects of the game that they struggled with.
It was me.
It probably was you. So I'm actually going to read a couple of the parts of his response because I think it informs the discussion a little bit, and it's helpful to hear from the designer himself.
Does it relate to what we're talking to right now?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is a little bit long, but I'm going to read it, and we can edit it if we need to. So Tom says in his own words, in Phoenicia, you have the constant lure of new shiny things, and finding the time and resources to fully exploit your current technologies is part of the challenge. Why did I design Phoenicia this way? For 2 reasons. First, I like the balance of strategy and tactics in many of my games. Having developments that offer long-term paths adds strategy to the game.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if the items up for auctions only gave you immediate benefits, then the game would become strictly tactical, with players evaluating each set of benefits relative to their current positions and bidding accordingly. However, if developments were all very expensive and strategic in nature, then players would only rarely buy them and then would go down different paths, quote unquote, not interacting with each other very often, nor having to reevaluate their position very often. By having a mixture of tactical and strategic items available at a fairly wide spread of prices, players are forced to reevaluate and interact with each other every round. Players cannot simply force a strategy, mapping out several rounds of future play, but instead have to constantly adapt to a changing situation.
Okay. Go ahead, Cameron.
I'm going to jump in here because I feel a bit fired up. This is exactly my perspective on this game. You cannot start the game and go, I'm going to go the dire route. I'm going to go cloth makers, and then I'm going to get a shipyard, and I'm going to buy... You can't do that in this game. You just can't. You can't control the order that the cards are going to come out in the deck. You can't control what other people are going to have. You can't control what
turn order,
what other people's level of production is going to be at this game at any point in time. You just can't control if 3 cloth makers are going to come out at the exact same time. And because you can't control that, and because no one else at the table can control that, you have to be willing to go, well, I guess I'm not going on that path. I'm going to do this now, for this round at least. And I think the other thing that I picked up on after playing this game several times is, man, I felt like we were absolutely neglecting the trade tracks. It was like, oh, this is this backup plan that I can do if I ever need a little bit of a boost. I don't think that that's how this game was designed. And I think that the fact that everyone has it and should be able to take advantage of it, I think it's there for a reason. And I watched Dan turned 3 corners of the board on his production track, and I was like, holy cow, he's playing this game the way that it's supposed to be, because he was a contender for the win, and he was doing things way different than we were.
Just out of a fluke situation, I think. No offense to Dan.
I don't think it was. It was
a fluke. Well, we'll get to this too, because Jason, you should have had that game wrapped up, but you drew 5 4s on one of your turns, which totally hamstrung you. Which we won't get into the 4s and 5s and 6s yet. But
being tied for the win was a fluke. But
that was a fluke.
The way that he played his production ramp was very different
I'm not
from the way that anyone else played it.
But it wasn't enough to overcome Jason's 2 dyers, I'll point out.
But I will say that was a fluke, maybe. But he also managed to tie me in a game where in round 2, everyone was like, this game's over. There's no chance that Jason's not winning this game.
Well, you won the game.
He tied me.
You won the game.
Right, but he tied me.
Out of a fluke. Because you drew crap cards towards the end of the game. You would have won the game easily had that not happened.
Right, but I'm saying that everyone in round 2 was saying this game is over.
Yeah.
Because...
And we were right.
Because arguably... No.
You won the game.
Hear me out.
I am hearing you out. I'm just
saying. You're not. You're
everybody said the game was over and Jason would win, and Jason did win.
Yes, that's clear. Okay. We've established that.
Okay, all right.
What I'm saying is that everyone made that statement that the game is over because a strategic mistake was made. You guys let me get a massive discount combination, right?
The elephant in the room.
So what I'm saying
let him
is
get
that
the other dire.
Is that making a strategic mistake early in the game, which should have given me the game, theoretically, right? Which can happen in this game, and I don't think that's broken. I think if you strategically make a bad play at the beginning of the game, someone is going to run away with it, and I think that's the way the game is designed, and we'll come back to that. But even still, Dan managed to tie me, and that's what I'm saying.
Off of fluke card draws.
I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
I'm saying that even with a massive strategic mistake,
on like the end score. What I'm saying is that it's a very, very powerful way to play this game. To play it the way that Dan played it, and to not neglect the production track. Dude, he got, what was it, advanced mining or something that he was using to bump his production? He played it, I think, the way that it was meant to be played, and he crushed the production track, and by the end, he had more money than anyone else at the table. He could get whatever he wanted. In fact, he took points away from me because I was surprised that he had that much money.
I totally agree. I'm not saying that Dan didn't play the production beautifully. He did. The point I'm making is that it wouldn't have been nearly as close as it was had it not been for some fluky, weird card draws towards the end of the game.
Yeah, but that's only focusing on the final round. What I'm saying is that everyone was saying that in round 2, there's no chance. And yet, in a game where a strategic mistake was made that should have handed me the game, he was able to contend. And yeah, the last round got him tied with me as opposed to 5 points behind me, right? But the fact that anybody was even in that game after the mistake was made early on that should have given me the game by a mile, I think is a testament to the fact that it's not as imbalanced as it seems, right? And that's what Tom was saying in his quote, which is that it is meant to be equally strong to be able to go for both the production tracks as it is for going for cards.
Sure.
And going for production is not dependent on your ability to bid up cards. It's purely dependent on your ability to produce income.
So what y'all are saying is that if everybody at the table is playing optimally, that long-term strategy with the discounts and stuff really shouldn't matter at all in this game.
No, I think you're...
Hold on, let me finish. So... because what you're saying is that nobody should allow somebody to have that killer discount synergy like we let you do, Jason. You said it yourself. You said that shouldn't have happened. So if everybody's not allowing that, then at that point it just all comes down to tactical play, I guess. Is that what we're saying?
I just
long-term strategic play should not be allowed in this game.
No, I feel like what Tom Lehman was trying to say about his own game is that he was trying to strike a balance between those two.
There is no balance. You can't implement your strategy because you have to constantly be playing tactically to not allow somebody to implement a long-term strategy. That's right.
You're so confident. No, not always, I don't think. I mean,
I think that
no one is going to play optimally all the time, right? So you have to be able.
I think that that's an assumption that you just can't make about this game, is that everyone is always going to play tactically. I think that there's an elegance to what has been attempted in this game that I personally don't feel like taking a dump on.
All right, well,
it's
a spirited discussion.
It is. I've got more to say, but we'll move on. But you did bring up the 4s, 5s, and 6s, Cameron, and you made some statements on it. So I know how I feel about this, but Jason, I'll let you speak to it. How did you feel about the 4s and the 6s in this game and that variability in your currency versus everybody just getting an expected amount every round that they could depend upon? Did you like that? Did you feel like that added to the game?
Yeah, so to give some more context to this, because I kind of breezed over it, when you gain income, which is in card form, you are drawing cards blindly off the top of a deck, and these cards can be a 4, a 5, or a 6. The majority of the cards in the deck are 5s, but there is a small portion that is 4 and a small portion that's 6. If I had to list my primary con with this game, it would be this aspect of it.
Yeah.
Experientially, playing this game, I got hit left and right with 4s in 2 games that I won. And so I have to...
Well, that's nice because I lost a game because of them. So I'm maybe a little more soured on them. But
yeah, you say that. I would argue your point, but we won't go that you lost the game because of that 4.
I did.
You lost your plan because of that 4.
I had no plan after I lost that auction.
Well, that's a problem.
Well, that's not my fault. Just out of... Okay, go ahead. I'm jumping ahead. Go ahead. I'll explain what I mean.
All right. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't love the fact that you can get 4s. However, I think the way Tom was trying to design this game, based on what he said, it was meant to be a compressed version of Scepters of Zavendor and a few of his other games that follow the same kind of snowball auction pattern. Outpost. He never addresses it, but maybe part of the justification there is that, well, it's a short enough game that A, it's going to equalize out over multiple plays, and B, it's a short game, so... whatever. But that doesn't carry enough weight for me to make me
what
not
does it
like
add
it.
to the game, though, right? That's what I kept asking myself. I kept trying to think, okay, why have this range? What does it add to the game strategically? And I honestly just couldn't come up with any reason. There's no bluffing.
Well, it creates uncertainty in bid amounts, right?
How
else do you ensure uncertainty?
That's all that it creates, though.
Uncertainty for who?
So if I know that every round you're drawing income of 3 cards, and I know that they're all worth 5, then I know exactly how much money you have from round to round.
Okay.
If I know that you're drawing cards and it might be a 4, 5, or 6, and you're drawing 4 cards, then that creates a range in which the amount of money you're holding falls within that range. Right.
It makes the decision, okay, the minimum bid of this is 9. Do I say 9 because I don't think that you can afford it, or do I say 11 so that when it gets to your turn, you can't outbid me?
Okay. Based on the assumption that I'm holding all 6s?
Based on the risk that you might be
holding more 6s than he is.
Than I think you're holding. Where I couldn't come back and you go
the only way you can
2 up from my bid.
The only way you can ensure that you're going to win and bid at this game is if I'm holding 3 cards, assuming that all of those cards are 6s, and then matching that amount, knowing that I can't exceed
That's
you.
what I mean. That's the only thing.
So what do 4s add to to that. How does that help anything other than screw you over at a completely inopportune time?
Yeah, I think that that's fair. I'm not actually in the position of defending
I hate these
the
fours.
concept of the fours. I do have a problem with the fact that you and I are both at production 3. We both get 3 cards on our turn, but now you have 18 and I have 12.
Right.
That's garbage.
Yeah, sucks.
There's nothing really redeemable about that.
Yeah, I get it. Everybody's drawing them. It's happening to everybody, but they just hit me at really bad times, time after time. And that's one thing, but I just couldn't in my mind justify why it was even happening. I was like, what is the point of these fours? They're just screwing me over, right? I just didn't enjoy that part of the game. So.
Yeah, I understand why they're in the game mechanically, but I question if there was maybe a better way to ensure imperfect information without penalizing players randomly to do it.
Yeah.
So,
all right, well, I know we're running a little long.
I have one more thing that I'm really trying to nail down, because I feel like I've heard you, because obviously we had a lot of conversations about this game before just now. And honestly, there's not been many games that you've been so ferociously down on.
Yeah.
And I've been really trying to figure it out, like what bugs you. And I'm just kind of curious. I think generally you like games that lay out this open playing field and encourage you to figure out your own path to victory. I think maybe this is why Phoenicia bugs you so much, because what Phoenicia says is, you can't ignore the worker track. I watched you in multiple games treat the worker track as like this backup plan. Like, I can't do X. I didn't win
the worker
that card.
track.
The trade tracks. Right, hunters and farmers. And
I wasn't
going hard on those.
I don't mean you were ignoring them. You weren't ignoring them.
I could never place them.
They were backup plans.
No, they weren't backup plans. There was one game I specifically bought a fort to get workers because I had advanced mining.
Yeah.
And I couldn't ever place them because I was constantly buying other cards to keep people from getting cards that they needed where I couldn't implement my plan. That's why I wasn't doing it.
Gotcha.
It wasn't because it was being ignored or because I didn't think it was viable. I couldn't do it because I felt pressure from the table to take cards that other people needed, and I could not move forward with what I wanted to do.
Do you feel like other players were cornering you and be like, Chris will take it?
Well, no, but and maybe this is where
defense.
I'm just not good at this game because I always get nervous and it happens sometimes. This is one of the reasons that drafting games drive me crazy. Is like, well, if I don't take it, can I trust everybody else to take it?
Yeah.
And then if they don't, then
They'll
so-and-so just got that card and the game is maybe over, right? And so I feel compelled to take cards in a blocking fashion, hurting myself. But then if I don't, am I going to trust you to do it? But if you don't do it, like when Jason got the second Dyer, I was like, well, dang. I guess I should have taken the Dyer, but I'd already taken a card last round.
Right.
When do I stop being the person who has to be blocking, right? Drives me crazy in this game.
Right, which in your view, it seems like is an offensive
while
thing
I was
to do.
blocking everybody, you were just merrily advancing your production, and Dan was merrily advancing his production.
And if I beat you by doing that strategy, isn't that me playing the game well?
I guess, but I hate it.
To that point, too, like I feel like it should be a rare situation in which a card that comes out on the table is only good for one player.
Right.
That should rarely ever happen.
Well, then why is every time that's happening, people are groaning? It was happening audibly sometimes. People are like, oh, God, can't let him have that. So everybody's like, well, who's going to take it? Should we really be fighting over who's going to take a card if they're all so great? You know?
I don't know. Maybe that's not understanding valuations.
Maybe not.
Man, Phoenicia, what a review this has been.
I love it when we don't agree. I hope people enjoy us. We're really not mad at each other, people. We're still best of buddies.
So I have to wrap this up on one last Tom Lehman quote. From the same post, he wrapped up the post with, "Most of the things you cite as bugs, I consider features, for the reasons I gave above. I suspect that Phoenicia just isn't your cup of tea."
Yeah, maybe.
Mic drop.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, that is a very generous way to sum that up.
Wait for my final thoughts. That's all I'll say about it. All right, Jason, you start us off.
Teaser.
This is the most I've written for final thoughts in a while. I think the gameplay in Phoenicia is extremely tight, and I believe that it's a very clever mix of strategy and tactics. Every single auction in this game is important, which I think is what the point of the design of this game was. It's not a forgiving game, and I believe it takes a few plays at least to learn to play this game in the way that it was designed to be played. That's not to say, however, that the game forces you down a path or that it is the same every time, because play is going to vary a good bit based on the order in which the cards come out, turn order, and everything else. This was a tricky one for me, based on the production and the rulebook issues alone, which we didn't even have time to go into. But the production on this game is awful.
Sucks.
And there's a whole series of BGG forums on that alone.
Rulebook's unreadable.
But based on that stuff, I would give this game a 3, maybe even a 2. I do have concerns about the money cards and the possibility of drawing lots of 4s having a negative impact. But I've also drawn lots of 4s in a game and won. Just know that you're going to have to deal with the fickleness of card draws at times if you are going to play this game, and that's part of it. I would love to play this one more, though, if anybody else at this table would be willing to.
Oh, I'm sure there would be.
And I think there's more to be explored here, which could even push this higher for me. But for now, with my current level of experience with the game, I feel confident giving this game a 4. So that's where I settled. Okay. If you're a fan of auction games, this is worth being explored. Despite the production woes and the strategic peculiarities that it has, I think it's worth exploring this game simply because of just, I don't know, that mix of strategy and tactics and the way that it forces you to evaluate every single card that comes up in the way that it does. There was something about that drew me in, despite Chris's moaning.
That's very well said. I feel like I have to go second.
Yeah.
We're all biting our nails to see what Chris is actually going to round out and say here, so I'll go second. I didn't really feel as strongly about the issues Phoenicia has, other than the ones that I mentioned, but I can see some of the problems, right? I think ultimately some of the cons we've discussed are built into the game. I think the things that we read from Tom himself underscore that. I think others emerge from how we were playing the game. I think Dan showed us. Shout out to Dan. Thanks for coming and playing. Yeah. He's been on the show before.
You played really good, Dan. I'm not saying you didn't play good. You played great.
I think Dan showed us it's possible to approach it entirely differently as he focused way more on his production track and caught his points up way later on when he was getting like 6 cards each turn. In general, I thought Phoenicia was fine. I often felt tension over what to bid on a card, whether I should change my strategy or stay the course, whether I should bail on trying to get any cards and just choose to focus on my trade track and get ahead, and a myriad of questions on when to play defense. Those things made this game interesting for me. So despite all the controversy, I'm actually also going to go with a 4. I definitely can't call it trash. It was way too interesting to talk about to land on meh and give it a 3.
All right, let's hear it.
Okay. I don't think I'm going to say what you think I'm going to say. We'll see. So I think one of the most interesting things about board games and about being a reviewer is how some people can see a game as being bad and then other people can find it to be good, right? How can that be? How can I think this game is terrible? Which I do. But you can find it to be good. And I will say I was in the minority. I think most people in our game group would probably give it a 4. And so I think whenever you find yourself standing on one side of the fence and everybody's on the other side of the fence, you have to evaluate yourself and you have to try to figure out why. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that reviewers make, and I'm going to try not to make that mistake because I had to think really hard, is you have to say that I think this game is bad for me, right? It's not good for me. I don't like the game, instead of just calling it bad outright. Now, why? Why was this game so terrible for me? Why did I hate it so much? Why did it elicit such a visceral response from me? I thought really carefully about it. I tried to figure out why. Because a lot of people were saying, well, you just don't like the pivot. Chris doesn't like the pivot. To which I say, BS, because Iberian Railways is all about pivoting.
Yeah, you guys talked about that a lot.
Yes, and I was the only person that liked that game. That game is nothing but pivoting. But the difference between Iberian Railways and Phoenicia is that when you pivot in Iberian Railways, you're always pivoting to your advantage. You're incentivized to pivot. If I pivot to try to pick up other points in Iberian Railways, it's because it's directly benefiting me because somebody neglected something on the board. In Phoenicia, the pivoting is always to deny. You're denying people at your own expense of what you're trying to do in the game, right? And so for me, I just don't enjoy that. And that's okay. You guys do like it. And I'm glad that you do. I said that multiple times when we were playing it. I'm glad that y'all like the game. I want you to continue to play it. I'm glad you're giving it 4s. I'm sure other people play it with you. But me, don't bring this game anywhere near me. I hate it. It just doesn't scratch the right itches for me. But, you know, some people like it. It's like some people like Munchkin. I don't like Munchkin. I think it's a bad game.
Yeah. Some people like matcha.
But some people like it. And so that's great. So basically what I'm saying is Phoenicia's like Munchkin, right? If you like Munchkin, I'm sure you'll love Phoenicia. It's great, right? But basically, all I'd say, I'm trying to joke around, but I didn't like it. I'm giving it a 2, obviously. I'm not giving it a 1 because, 1, if you haven't figured this out yet or if you're new to the podcast, 1 isn't our worst games. There are actually some 1 games that I would prefer to play more than this game.
Smiley face?
No. But
1 means it's a broken game. It's not even like a valid game.
True, but
it's fun to do.
But there are parts of Tonga Bonga that I enjoyed more than playing this game.
Wait, you said Tonga Bonga was broken?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because of the end game. The first 2/3 of Tonga Bonga is really fun.
Yeah.
I'd give it a 4, but the end ruins it for me.
Okay.
This game's just bad for me. I'd rather have a root canal than play this game. But despite that, what Cameron and Jason have said, I think you should give it a try, especially if you like auctions. It's worth the experiment. It just wasn't my cup of tea. It's not what I'm looking for in a game.
All right.
Happy anniversary, everybody.
I respect y'all's opinions as reviewers, and I'm glad you like it.
Chris, I love you. You're my best friend.
That's right.
Well, I knew if nothing else, this game would bring the controversy, so it lived up to its name.
That's right.
All right. Well, where can we find Phoenicia?
So there are copies available on Noble Knight. If you want to pick it up there, you can use our discount code HIDDEN22. And there are also a whopping 48 copies on the BGG Marketplace. A lot of people getting rid of this game on BGG. If you want to pick it up there, I'm sure they loved it, but, just want to get rid of it. Run its course.
You've said your piece, Chris.
All right, I'm done. I'm done, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us on this first anniversary episode of Hidden Gems. If you like what we're doing here, please remember it's a huge help if you would leave us a rating or a review on your podcast platform of choice. Go on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a rating. You can also follow us on our various social media platforms. Check out our BGG Guild if you want to interact with us or share a game that you think is a hidden gem. And if you're so inclined, please consider supporting the show over at patreon.com/hiddengemspodcast. And remember, for this week, you can use code anniversary on our website and get yourself one of those new Hidden Gems t-shirts. Well, until next time, I'm your host, Cameron.
It's Chris.
And I'm Jason.
Thanks for listening. This episode of Hidden Gems, number 27, was recorded in Raleigh, North Carolina on February 20, 2022. Well, it was bound to happen eventually. Join us again in 2 weeks when we take a look at a trio of games centered around boring shipping themes. Hidden Gems is produced and edited by Chris Alley, Cameron Lockey, and Jason Yanchuleff. Our Board Game Geek Guild is monitored and managed by honorary Hidden Gems team member Ghidorah. Our show's logo was illustrated by designer and artist Caitlin Nieto. Check out her work on Instagram at It's Caitlin Nieto. We would love to hear from you. Feel free to join the discussion on our many social media accounts. You can find us on Facebook at Hidden Gems Board Game Podcast, Instagram at hiddengems.podcast, and Twitter at Hidden Gems Board. Disagree with one of our reviews? Have something you want to say about one of the games we discussed today? You can also make your voice heard on our Board Game Geek Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, guild number 3874. Once again, thank you for joining us on Hidden Gems, and until next time, fellow gem seekers, enjoy your games and enjoy your search.